Hello, students. Dr. Nathanson. I want to talk to you today about a topic which I'm pretty passionate about, and that is, how can you be more creative in your life, in your work, in your school, and so on. I think, being creative is not just for artists, it's for really anyone. Learning to be creative just means being able to, um, think from different perspectives. So to begin this session, I would like you to take a moment and think of a challenge in your life. And notice I say challenge. When you frame something as a problem, I find that we're less resourceful. In fact, maybe I could prove it to you right now. Um, First, think of just repeat after me. I'm going to trust you're doing this. Repeat after me. I have a challenge. Okay. One more time. I have a challenge. Okay, good. Now repeat this after me. I have a problem. I have a problem. Hopefully you can see the difference and feel the difference. My point here is that the words that we choose to use when we're being creative, can make the difference to, good solutions or not so good solutions. So be careful the words that you choose. So anyway, I like to use the word challenge. So right now, take a moment and I want you to think about a challenge that you're having in your life that's important to you and that you would really like to solve. And I'm just going to give you a minute to think about that and maybe just write it down. If you can't think of a challenge in your life right now that you'd like to solve, think of one that you'll probably have in the future. And make sure this is something that's important to you. If it's not important, you're not really going to work on it. So I'm going to give you a minute, actually, maybe 40 seconds. So take a moment and just write down a challenge in your life right now that's really bothering you, that you really would like to solve, but you're not sure what to do. I'm looking at you here and I can see that you have some ideas. And so during the next short minutes, I'm going to go over some ideas, some methods, some ways I suggest to become more creative. And as I go through each of these examples, I want you to then to apply these ideas to your challenge. And I think by the end of the session, you may just have some new ideas. So let's get started. So creativity is an art and it's a science. I mean, it's an art because, you try something and if it works, you use it again because it's successful. It's a science because, there are lots of books and papers and tools developed to help people become more creative. And they're really good. One of the best books I ever read on how to be more creative is a book called, A Whack on the Side of the Head by Roger Van Orange. I think it's Orech. It's from a long time ago, but it's a great book. And there are many books like that help, one to be more creative. Tony Buzan, a British researcher, has done a lot of work on creativity. And he developed the idea of mind mapping, as a way to become more creative. As we'll talk about in class, Walt Disney came up with a wonderful planning method, which he used for developing Disneyland. So creativity, it's an art and a science. Sometimes you just have to try things, and if they work, you stay with them. That's it. It's that simple. I think sometimes it just takes a different perspective. Normally when a person, or when you, I should say, tries to solve a challenge, you try to solve it right here, right now, which is first person present. So you say to yourself, I have a challenge. What am I going to do about it right now? And you see, that's only one perspective. I suggest at least 8 other perspectives, if not more. For example, you could think of a person in your life right now, as you think about this challenge that you're having, who is really close to you, right? Somebody that you really care about. And you can become them for a moment, and from their perspective, look at you from a distance and suggest what you might do. and you could receive that advice. You can, from an observer's perspective, I call this, and by the way, your friend, that would be second person present. And then from an observer's perspective, you know, third person present. This is someone that really doesn't know you. So you take on a perspective of someone else. You look in at you having this challenge, and you give some advice as to what you think that you should do. If we were together right now, I have these mats I use that are first person present, second person present, third person present, and then I 3 mats in the past, 3 mats in the future. And I have you actually walk around on these mats, and you could do this at home. And when you walk around these mats, it really kind of forces you to have a new orientation. So, all right, and now you can turn around and you can go 5 years in the past, before you even had this challenge. So you go back 5 years, you turn around, and now in the past, in first person past, you look into your imaginary window and you see yourself in the future having this challenge, and you give some advice on what you think you should do. And of course, you can go back in the past and do second person past. So person that's close to you, you take on their persona, or third person, right? You take on an observer from the past. And then you go forward 10 years into the future, or of course, 5 years from right now. And you get into the future when this challenge has already been solved. And from first person future, you turn around and you give yourself some advice back to your past about what you did to solve it. And then in your past, you receive this insight. And of course, from your future, you can give advice back from a good friend in the future that you think you might have, second person future, and of course, third person future observer, someone from the future who might just look back and give you some advice. This may sound crazy, but when you actually do it, you will gather, in this case, 9 different perspectives of how to solve your challenge. And so that's the idea, right? The more input, the more ideas you can come up with to solve your challenge, the better solution that you'll have. Motion changes emotion. I think it's important when you're trying to solve a challenge not to try to solve it in the same place. So, get up and move around. Right now, after you finish watching this, if you were to get up and take a walk, we'll talk about walking in a few minutes, and think about your challenge, and then come back and sit down, you will have a different reaction, a whole new set of ideas. So motion changes emotion. It's good to move around. I like to tell my students, sometimes it takes thinking about how you're going to think about it before you think about it. In other words, when do you think about solving your challenge? When you're hungry? It's not a very good idea. When you're full and sleepy? It's not a very good idea. When you're depressed? That's not a very good idea. Or do you think about solving your challenge when you've just exercised, or you're happy, or you're feeling grateful, or you're in a good mood, or you're well rested? So when you think about things and how you think about things will impact how you solve your challenges in a creative way. When you're trying to solve a challenge, make lots of decisions. There's an MBA class, I think it's at the University of Michigan, and it's called How to Make Bad Decisions. Maybe it's How to Make Poor Decisions. And the idea is that you're taught in the class is to make lots of decisions and, of course, learn from them. So when you're trying to be creative, it's really important to make lots of decisions. Every time you make a decision, a new perspective opens up. And you know this. Think back to when you were trying to solve a challenge in the past, and you just felt stuck. And then you made a decision, and all of a sudden everything felt free. It's like having a line of dominoes, and you hit one and they all fall down. So start to, as you think right now in this session about the challenge that you're having, I want you to think about what decisions right now can you take, which will kind of free up the energy to move forward. When you're a leader of yourself, which you are all the time, every day, or when you're a leader of others, you're essentially moving information around to help people become creative. Here's a quote which I won't read, from former chairman of Disney. And really, as you read here, what his message here is that, taking risk in a creative way is really important for trying to create, new ideas. If you're either reactive or stagnant or afraid to try some new ideas that at the moment might not seem very practical, you're going to get stuck. You're not going to move forward. So creativity involves intuition, using your gut feel. Let's do that right now. So think of this challenge that you're trying to solve right now. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to listen to your inner voice. And then I want you to write down what your inner voice tells you to do. So go inside right now, maybe close your eyes, take a deep breath. And if you had to make a decision on how to solve this challenge that you're having right now, what would you do? What are you going to do? And to get that answer, I want you to go in and ask the inner you. Imagine the inner you, all of the inner parts of you were sitting at a conference table. And you say, hey, everybody, I have 30 seconds. What should I do? Listen to your inner voice right now. And then I want you to write down what you hear. If you have to replay this later and do this, that's good. And so that's what intuition is going with your gut feel. Listening to the inner you. Ingenuity is, when you have a new bright idea, try it out. And insight comes from the integration of the two. As you listen to your inner voice, you try new ideas, you say, hey, this is cool. I never thought about this before. When you're trying to solve a challenge, you want to have as many possibilities as possible. I'm not really good at, in fact, I don't think I've ever done it, but, to change oil in your car, you use what's called a funnel. It's this long thing, and it's very narrow on one end, it's very wide on the other, where you pour the oil. And when you're trying to solve challenges, to be more creative, sometimes you have to open up the possibilities, using this as a metaphor. And so the more you try to be creative, the more creative that you will be. So right now, again, think to this challenge that you're having. If you can't frame it, if you can't define it or write it down, then you really don't have anything to work on. Now think of the present state, and that is, how would you define the situation right now? You might say, I am depressed because I don't have any friends. I don't have enough money. I'm not sure what I want to do in my life with regards to my work. Whatever the challenge is, you want to frame it so it's very clear. Your mind doesn't like a vacuum. And so whatever you give it, it's going to go with it. So you have to be very careful how you frame the challenge. And then probably more important, you have to come up with a desired state, which is in the future, what do you want your life to look like when this challenge is solved? Let's go with one example. Maybe your health is poor and you say, wow, I'm really out of shape and I want to have a better body, a better mind, but I don't know what to do. And then you take a moment and you think in the future, I see myself with more energy. I see myself looking better, feeling better. And until you can define what, the desired state is, you're not going to have what's called a gap between the future and the present. And then there's nothing to work on. So it's really important to define these two. Einstein said, our thinking creates problems that the same type of thinking will not solve. And he also said, by the way, that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so what he meant here is that you can't continue to try to solve challenges in the same way every single time and expect new results. It reminds me why I drew this picture of, here's a story. A man's walking down the street and he sees someone, a person on the ground looking for something, and he says to them, what's the matter? Can I help you? And the person says, well, I can't find my keys. I'm looking for my keys. And there's a light over him and he's looking for his keys. And the person says, and the person gets down and says, well, let me help you. Let me look for your keys. He said, oh, no, you'll never find your key. You'll never find them. And the person said, well, why not? Oh, because I lost my keys 10 miles from here. And the person said, well, why are you looking for your keys here then? He says, well, because there's a there's a light here and I can see. So, you know, it's important when trying to solve a challenge to really expand the ways that you go about it. I worked with Robert Dilts years ago. He's an amazing researcher. He's one of the creators of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is another way of looking at our communication and how that affects our behavior. And he had a couple interesting ideas about how to solve challenges. He said that, for example, it's important to think about a challenge in a different way than it was created. So think about your challenge right now. And I ask you, how might you think about this challenge in a different way, in a softer way, in a more friendly way, in a more positive way? And then see if you could what's called uncover and increase the solution space. You know, imagine you woke up in the morning, you have a comforter on your bed. Imagine what you might see. Don't tell me. If you threw that comforter off in the morning, you might discover some things that are there. And so with your challenge, you have to increase the solution space. You have to go off and look for new solutions. You have to increase the space. I'll give you a suggestion in a minute how to do that. Expand our perception. You know, sometimes we're too negative and we're trying to solve a challenge and we have blinders on, right? We don't see the forest from the trees. And then try to find elements in the larger solution space that can solve it. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. In other words, expand this, so you have a challenge now that you're thinking about, right? See how you can expand the solution space, stand back from a broad perspective, and see what else is in the environment that might help you to solve your challenge. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. It's also important when you're trying to solve a challenge is to find limiting assumptions. Now, what's an assumption? Assumption is really what you think about things. You know, you make a list of your assumptions. Well, this is going to happen. This is not going to happen. This is going to happen. This is the way this is. And then look within that list and ask yourself, well, where are some of these assumptions limiting? Is this really true that I'm not going to be able to do this or I'm not going to be able to do that? When trying to solve a challenge, you know, see if you can identify roadblocks. You know, if you're late to work and you're driving and you see a traffic jam, you think, well, where else can I go if I turned around and went this way and went that way? And the same thing is true in your life. Identify new resources. Where in the world, in your life, can you pick and choose other resources that you might add to your situation that helps you, you know, to find this, solve this challenge? One of the favorite things I like to have my students do is what's called divergent thinking. Does anyone know what divergent thinking is? It means thinking about things that on the surface have nothing to do with your challenge, but then using those ideas in such a way in your mind that they actually solve your challenge. I'm going to show you. One of the things I like to do is do what I call the dictionary test. And I'll show you how it works, and then we'll do it, and we'll see if this helps you. So you have to take my word on it. This is an actual dictionary. It's not a fake dictionary, and, you know, it's a heavy dictionary. Maybe some of you have never seen this before. It's an old-fashioned dictionary, right? And there's no tabs. I didn't do any pre-work, I promise you. So here's how the exercise works. Right now, I want you to think of your challenge. Think of your challenge. And then you would do this on your own, but I'm going to do this for you now to show you how this works. So what happens is, and I think doing this around 6 times is optimum. I'm just going to do this 3 times, but so you do this 6 times. So what you do is you take the dictionary and you say to yourself ahead of time, I'm going to look at the 4th word. So you make this up. I'm going to look at the 4th word. So I'm going to open in a second. I'm going to open the dictionary to a random page. I'm just going to open it, right? And ahead of time, you say to yourself, I'm going to read the 3rd word on the right and the definition. And then you open the dictionary and you find the 3rd word on the right or whatever it is that you defined. And you read that definition and you use that definition using divergent thinking to solve your challenge. So let's do this. So think of your challenge right now that you have, okay? Okay, and I'm gonna open the dictionary and I'm gonna read to you the fourth word on the left and the definition. So here I go, right? Okay, and as I do this, I want you to think, listen to my ideas and think how you can apply this to your challenge. Okay, fourth idea or fourth word on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oblanceolate. Oblanceolate. That's actually the word. Oblanceolate. The definition. Inversely laxiliate. Inversely laxiliate. You know, sometimes we get stuck on solving our challenge because we run into something that we really don't understand. Or maybe, like this word, we've never heard before. And so as a result, we say to ourselves, that's not going to work. That's stupid. I'd never heard of that before. And yet that might be the thing that you need to do. And so using this first example, I want you to think of maybe a crazy idea that you might try to solve your challenge that on the surface seems really crazy or maybe really simple. But just because you haven't heard or done it before doesn't mean you can't use it. Okay, let's do the next one. I'm going to read you the 10th word on the right. Here we go. Boom. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inalienable. 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 Incapable of being alienated, surrendered, or transferred. Maybe, in your case, you've listened to too many people. They've controlled you. And all that you think to do is what other people have said. Well, you must do this, you must do that. And really what you must do is, as the word suggests, is to pull away and try some new things. Maybe give yourself permission, right, to not be controlled for once and to try something new. And this last one I think will be kind of funny. My intuition tells me this will be funny. I'm going to open the dictionary, the second word on the right. Ready? Go. Just did it. Didn't make it up. Fire irons. F-I-R-E-I-R-O-N-S. It's utensils or tongs for tending a fire. You know, when there's a fire, one of the mistakes you might get, if it's a big fire, is to take a cup of water, I have tea here, and just pour it on a little bit of the fire and hope that it goes away, when in fact the fire is raging through the house. So maybe the challenge that you're trying to solve is too big right now for small approaches. And maybe what you really need is a much bigger approach. So think for a moment, that a pair of tongs right now is not going to help solve your challenge. Maybe you need to try something more drastic, something big. Maybe you need a big change in your life that will help you bust through this challenge. So there you go. The dictionary test, I suggest on your own you do this. Right now I'm thinking about how I can, by the way, improve my own immune system. So as I think about that, I'll use myself as an example. I'm going to open the dictionary, and here's dictionary, and I'll look at the 6th word on the left. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Idealist. I-D-E-A-L-I-S-T. An artist or author who advocates or practices idealism. Well, there you go. Do I even need to explain that to you? Sometimes we just have to think big and look at new possibilities. In my case, to improve my immune system, maybe I have to start looking at more ways to be stronger and healthier and better. Maybe things that I haven't thought of before. When being creative, it's also important to come up with new goals, right? So if you come up with some new goals now that match some creative ideas, this will help you start out in a new direction. So often new goals can help you bust through a block, when you're trying to solve a challenge. I've given you a video that I'd like you to look at on your own. This is the Walt Disney creative strategy. In the 1950s, when Walt Disney was trying to develop Disneyland, he took his managers into a room and he gave them baseball caps. And they said the caps, he wrote dreamers on the cap, and he said he gave them an hour or so, and he said, I want you to dream of all the possibilities about what Disneyland could be. And they did that, and they came up with many ideas. And then he took the hats away, he made them go to another room. And he said, now wear these hats. And these hats said critic. And he said, now I want you to be as critical as possible about why all those ideas that you came up with won't work. And of course, it was easy to be critical, and they came up with lots of ideas, and they took them to a final third room. He gave them a new cap. It said realist. He said, given what you've just learned and thought about from dreaming and being critical, I want you to write down what's practical at this point, that you think Disneyland should be about. And he used that strategy to develop and build Disneyland. And later he created a planning method around this, and I've used this in a lot of my consultations with different companies over the years. And so I think you'll enjoy this. And that's just one application of a planning method which uses the Disney model. So I've given you a wonderful video about walking, and I'd like you to look at it. But in short, walking is a great strategy for solving challenges. And here's what you do. You go to a busy part of town, versus like an empty park, right? A busy part of town where there's a lot of activity, cars driving and people, walking, and lots of activity. And you tell yourself you're going to walk for 30 minutes. You're going to walk for 30 minutes. And as you walk, you want to walk about 5 miles per hour. So that's a pretty good pace. Not like this, but a pretty good pace. And the idea is to solve your challenge by the end of the walk. Remember, motion changes emotion. So you start your timer and you say, how am I going to solve X? And you start walking. And as you're walking, you're thinking about all the things that you can do to solve this challenge. But while you're walking, and this is what's key, is you're looking at all the resources, people, signs, buildings, and you're asking yourself, how could a Coca-Cola sign, help me solve my challenge? As I'm thinking about my immune system, I think, well, Coca-Cola has so much sugar, it's very bad for you. By the way, take a can of Coke and pour milk into it and let it sit overnight. And in the morning, all it will be left is the sugar. And it'll fill up probably a quarter of the glass. And you'll never want to drink Coke again. But that's an aside. But I just thought of the Coca-Cola sign. I thought, I should cut back on sugar. So sometimes we have desserts at night. And sugar is not good for building your immune system. Anyway, you get the idea. So when you're through with this 30-minute walk, you sit down and you write down all the new ideas you have. So many famous people in history, I won't give it away, as you'll see in this video, have used walking to solve their challenges and to become more creative. So to foster creativity, find people who are creative and learn from them. Learn to relax and empty your mind, right? Learn to relax and empty your mind. I use the app Headspace to help me meditate during the day. You want to empty your mind. When your mind is empty is when some of the greatest ideas will come to you. Learn to trust your intuition. Learn to play. Think back when you were a child. What games did you like to play when you were little? I grew up in San Francisco, and when I was, 7, 8 years old, even though my mom told me I wasn't supposed to, so don't say anything, I would go to Golden Gate Park with my friends, and there's a place called Strawberry Hill. It's at Stoll Lake where all the boats are, and there's a bridge. And basically one group of kids would go off and hide, and the rest of us would capture the flag, right? We'd have to find the kids, tag them and bring them back to the fort. We had so much fun with that. A few years ago, with one of my in-person classes, I actually took the class, although they thought I was crazy. It was a 3-hour class, to Golden Gate Park, and we went to this place. We played this game, and it was hilarious. And afterwards, we came back and we debriefed the exercise. And the bottom line was people were closer. They felt they had fun. And, oh, by the way, they all had a challenge to solve. And at the end, they came up with ideas. And I've given you another YouTube video to look at on this topic. So learn to play games and have fun. I've written an article on this on my website. I just wanted to go over some, what I think are the top 10 steps to improving your creativity. One is to go outside. Fresh air, sunlight, motion is really important. And that's the second point, which is move, right? Draw pictures. When you draw pictures, you're working with the right side of your brain, which is the intuitive, colorful side. Use colors, draw pictures. In fact, right now, maybe you can draw a picture of the challenge that you're having, and then draw a picture of what you would like it to look like when you solve the challenge. Talk out loud. In other words, talk about, even to yourself, about here's what the challenge is, and here's how I'm going to solve it. Like earlier when I said, wow, I want to strengthen my immune system. Maybe I should eat less sugar. Once that goes into your brain, you start to think about that. Reduce stress. When you're under stress, it's really hard to be creative. I think you know this. So whatever you can do to minimize stress, it's really hard to come up with new solutions when you're under stress. Change your environment. Don't try to solve the challenge in the same place every time. Talked about thinking from new perspectives. We talked about the dictionary test. By the way, get yourself a dictionary to do this. Don't look up on your phone because it's too easy to cheat. We talked about new perspectives, giving yourself advice from the past, from the future, from the present. And we talked about future pace, which is going into the future when your challenge is solved, looking around at what your life is like and thinking about why this is important to motivate you to move there and to come up with new ideas that you could send back to the present. When you're not able to play, you can't be creative, and you get depressed. One quick story: when I was a little boy, I was pretty poor, but I was always happy. I didn't have a lot of toys as a kid, and I love sports. I used to so during the seasons, I would play those games. So in other words, in my room by myself. So for example, during basketball season, I would take a sock and I would wrap it up in a rubber band, and I would have an old rusty can, and I would just I would write down whatever teams were playing. I would write down the rosters and put down their names, and I would simulate an entire basketball game with statistics. I would have crowd noise, and if I shot and made it, I would write down 2 points for this person. And I in my head, I played this whole game. During baseball season, I would, without anything, I would again write down 2 teams that were playing each other. I would write down who was at first base and second base and third base. I'd put the lineups in place. I knew all the players. And on my floor, of course, all this is in my mind. I had 2 pieces of paper with the rosters and so on. What I would do is in my mind, I would close my eyes and I would pretend to be the pitcher, and I would throw the ball. And I'll show you, depending on how my hand hit my other hand, I could tell by the sound whether that was a foul ball, and some of you that know baseball, a home run, a base hit. Like, for example, at the risk of humiliating myself, this is what I did. That's a home run. Actually, it would probably hit off the wall for a triple. Anyway, I would play this all day, and I would write down triple. And it was excited. My mom would come in and catch me doing these things, and she'd think, something's wrong with this kid. No, I was just really creative. I didn't have a basketball hoop. I grew tired of the basketball of my coffee can. So I took a hanger and I made it into a circle, and I bent a hanger. I went downstairs. There was like a little driveway, and I taped it on the wall with Scotch tape, and that became my basketball. But I only had a tennis ball, and every time I shot, the hanger fell off the wall, and I had to go tape it up. So I was very persistent. And then one day, maybe I was 10 years old, I don't know, my mom bought me at the time, are you ready for this? A plastic basketball hoop that goes on the back of your door with a ball. Oh my gosh, I was the happiest kid in the world, the richest kid in the world. I was dunking, and now my mom didn't like this because I made a lot of noise. Okay, you get the idea. So, by the way, now they have software, of course, that you could play sports, and I only wish I would have invented that, because I did this in my head. So start to think about how can you make your life more playful. I don't want you to spend all night on video games, but think about maybe once a week, what kind of a foolish game can you play that maybe you played when you were small? This will, for sure, improve your creativity. So that's all I wanted to cover in our talk. What I suggest is you think about 3 things that you can do, from watching this lecture that will help you, become more creative, and try them and see what happens. And if they work, stick with them. If they don't work, try something new. All right. So until next time, I should say, good luck being more creative, and know that you can solve any challenge that you have. And know that I'll be cheering for you as you go. See you soon. See you in class. Take care. Be well.